To get started, this project is actually only going to take about 30 lines of code in our main file. I've just called it countries.py. So it's pretty quick. And then we do have an index file that I'll provide for you as well. So there's certainly more code there, but mostly JavaScript, HTML. Pay no heed to all this file structure here. I have created this previously, and it's in a Git repo. So these colors have to do with Git, which we haven't really discussed in this course. If there's enough interest, I could go into that. But countries.py is our main py file. I've deleted all the content so I can actually walk through this with you creating it. And then we have a templates folder with an index.html. And again, I'll provide this. But all you need to do is create a folder. I've just named it Countries API. Within that folder, create a templates folder. Within templates, index.html needs to be created. And then just within Countries API, we also can create countries.py. So countries.py and index.html are our two files. Index.html is in templates. Countries API is in our Countries API folder. So that's all we need here. So look at the resources for this index.html file and download that, put it in your templates folder that you will create. And let me walk through this index.html first, and then we will create the code, the Python code, so that our index.html can represent the data that we like. So we haven't discussed HTML. We haven't discussed JavaScript. That's why I'm providing this for you. But I think it's cool to have this page. So don't worry too much about the details. If you do know HTML, JavaScript, then you'll understand what this is doing. But as an overview, this is HTML, which is how web pages are rendered. It tells web pages what to look like, essentially. And so we have different sections and different data in these sections. For example, this head data contains a lot of things that are JavaScript or other libraries that are JavaScript.js, which I've just found, and these help display the page properly. They help give it that interactiveness. And then for the actual body of our page, we have a header called countries, then number of countries, and we see these curly braces. That's Jinja. I don't know at the time that I'm sharing this project with you if we will have covered Jinja yet. We may or may not have, but let me know if there's a lot of interest in that. It's just a way of rendering Python variables. Num countries is a Python variable into our HTML. So our HTML page sees these brackets and says, oh, what's inside here must be some Python data. So then we have a table, and our table headers, name, population, flag, and languages. These are the titles of each table column. And then the table body, some more Jinja. We're doing a Jinja for loop. So for every country in countries that we have, this countries list that we'll be creating, every piece of data, every column for every row. So this is one row. Every column in that row will have a different piece of data. We'll have the name, population. This is dictionary. So the name, whatever value comes from that key, the population, the country flag, and the language. And that is essentially what this HTML is doing. So I wanted to just give you a basic understanding of that, so you can download that. And then let's go over to our countries.py. All right, we need to write about 30 lines of code here. So first of all, we have learned about Flask. We have learned about requests. These are our third-party Python modules that we can use. So I want to put your knowledge to use with this project in practice. So from Flask, import Flask, render, and render template. Also import requests. Our app is Flask name. We'll just call it our namespace there. We'll create app.routes for just slash for the index. Create a method for the index. And then here's where we start doing more stuff with our API. This is where we start hitting our API. So the URL, https://restcountries.com/v3.1/all. That's the URL we're hitting. That is this page. We're going to be pulling this data, everything here. You see there's a lot of data here. We're going to be pulling all of this into with the requests module. So let's name our variable response, which will contain our GET requests. .get URL. So we're hitting that API. And then that's what our response will be all this data, everything on this page. That's what response is now. And then countries will be response.json. So we've used JSON before. We're making it in a format that's a little bit easier for us to consume. So that's where we're at for now. Now let's create a variable called country info. This is going to be a list. This will contain all of our countries. It will be, each item will be a dictionary with all the data we have for a single country. So we'll have a lot of entries, a lot of dictionaries as the entries in this list. Each dictionary represents a country. So for country in countries, in our response, so for every piece of data here, see each one of these dictionaries is represents a country. See with different names: Switzerland, Grenada, South Georgia. So we have many entries for separate countries. So for country in countries, from our response, try name equals country name common. So that piece of data will be the name key, which is a dictionary for us, and then the common key within that name key. The value of that will be South Georgia in this instance. So for every country, we'll pull the actual name, population, format, I'll tell you about this format function here. It's kind of neat. But country population. So if we search for that within this country, we see, 30 people. But let's go to a country with a greater population. Here we go. This one has 112,519 people. However, you'll notice it's just a number. It's an integer. So I want to view it with a comma. I just thought that was a little nice touch. So I'm going to put a comma after 112,000. And that's what this format does, is it puts a comma separator in there where it should be. So kind of neat. And believe it or not, we only have about 10 more lines of code to write, and we'll be able to test this out. Flag is country flags PNG So let's search for flags and then the PNG value. So if I were to open this link, which I will do for you, it's just a PNG of the flag, which is neat. So we're pulling the flag. And then the language, which will be making into a list, because often there are multiple languages represented. Values. Let's look what that is actually doing. See, like there's multiple languages spoken. So we're taking those values and putting them into a list. All the values from the country languages dictionary. This is going to be a dictionary, and we're just putting those into the dot values, which would be each of the values, not the keys. We're not pulling those keys. We're just pulling the values here from that dictionary and putting that into a list. Okay, so that's all we're pulling. If you want to pull more data, you certainly can. You can look at any key. You could pull the capital city. You could pull the currencies. You could pull the GPS coordinates. I saw those somewhere. You could pull the time zone, continent. All this data, you could practice the area. I'm not sure what value that is. There should be documentation on that probably within the REST Countries API on the main page if you just go to restcountries.com. But we could pull more data. So I'm just pulling these 4 values to demonstrate this to you. So we're going to try pulling that. And we are doing a try except because I ran into key errors when I've done this before, where some of the countries don't have the necessary values, such as languages. Some of the countries don't list a language. I think there were 1 or 2, like Antarctica is in there in that API page, and it does not have languages. So it threw a key error. So that's why I've put this into a try except block to catch that key error. And I'm not going to add Antarctica. We could handle that differently if we want. But for now, I'm just going to print some output saying country. And then the country name. Got to use single quotes here because we're using an F string for the outer quotes. Country name. Common. Had a key error. And then the error as E. We'll print that. So I'll show you that output here in a minute. So then we're still within our for loop here. We're going to append country info. We're going to start appending all these countries to this list. We'll append every country as we loop through our for loop. We'll append countries to our country info list. Info.append. Name will be name. Population will be population. Flag will be flag. Language will be language. So these keys and values there. And then num countries. I was also interested in seeing how many countries we pulled. I thought that was interesting. All right, and then we can back out of our for loop and return from our index function. We can return the render template. Render template index.html. We're passing in countries, our countries list, and the number of countries. So we can use these values in our HTML Jinja. That's what we need there. And then lastly, if name equals main app.run to run the Flask server. So that's it. Let's see if we have anything we're missing here. I just saved that, and let's run it. Looks like that started our server. Wait a minute. Let's go here. Oh yeah, there we go. Let's refresh this, make sure it's running. Yeah, we're running. We're running our server. So that's it. So our server's running, and we now have our Flask server. We're pulling the data from our countries API from here, and then we're pushing it to our own page with some neat formatting. So instead of the raw data, we get the pretty data. We could add more columns if we'd like. Again, we can filter by population. This is a little outdated, I believe, just so you're aware, but provides us a great test bed for what we're trying to accomplish here. And I believe I already previewed this, but we can show a lot of entries on a page. This is part of those JavaScript libraries. Search for countries. There we go. So pretty neat. I hope you found this project insightful. I certainly enjoyed doing it. And I'm trying to think here if there's anything else to add. We've talked through line by line our Python. Just make sure you have the proper file structure. So I have one folder, and then within that folder, I have a templates folder, then the index.html. Also within the main folder, I have countries.py. You can name that whatever you'd like. Yeah, and so look to the resources on this video for the index.html file and the countries.py file. You can pull those, run it yourself, play with it, and awesome. I think that's it. I can't think of anything else to add, guys. So hope that was a fun project. It's kind of amazing what we can do in so few lines of code, less than 30 lines of Python code, and then some HTML. And we have one app.route for our Flask server. So, all right, there you have it. We will see you later.